Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Rojas from Socorro PD in Texas. He just celebrated his 24th year in law enforcement. Really looking forward to having this conversation today. So, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here, Chief Rojas.
Thanks for having me, Paige. I appreciate the invite, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
I am too. I was hoping you could rewind us 24 years and give us a little bit of background.
Wow, so 24 years ago, I was 20 years old. I lived at home with my mom and my sister. So I actually, kind of background, I graduated from high school. I did some community college. I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I thought I wanted to be in business, thought I wanted to be in sales. I kind of went that route for a little bit, and I ended up running into a detective because I had to file a report on one of my employees. Then I found his career to be pretty interesting. Then, of course, I looked in my family, and I realized that I had family members who were law enforcement. One of my uncle, my late uncle, and also my godfather, I he was a U.S. Border Patrol agent, and he was a Border Patrol agent in charge in one of the areas here in Texas. And without realizing it, I have a family that was in law enforcement. I guess at that time I just really didn't pay attention to it. And with his guidance and some other people, some other cousins that I had, I took the plunge and I applied for multiple agencies. I applied for Border Patrol and I applied for the El Paso County Sheriff's Office at the same time. They were the only agencies that would take a 20-year-old kid with minimal education, and the sheriff's office called me first. So I got hired I was hired in June 11th. I graduated from the Basic Detention Officer Academy in 2001, and I stayed there. I stayed there for almost 23 years, little over 22 and a half years. I stayed there. I worked as a detention officer, worked my way all the way up to command staff to an appointed position under the sheriff. I worked as a detention officer, a special reaction team member, which is kind of like the SWAT team for the jail. I did that while I was in the jail. Once I left the jail, I became a patrol deputy, FTO, an instructor. I worked special traffic investigations. I was a motor officer. So I tried to kind of really build my career and trying to learn every aspect of the sheriff's office. Um, Never did I really think that I was ever gonna be the chief of police, right? And I will tell you that the 20-year-old me when I came in, or even the 22-year-old peace officer, would have never thought that I'd be sitting in a chair that I'm sitting in, and somehow governing body decided to take the jump to make me the chief of police. And I guess as I progressed through my career, I kind of fell in love with leadership. I fell in love. I always had a love for law enforcement once I joined, and the leadership kind of grew. Once I got to pretty much believe that I had already learned as much as I could as a deputy, I worked every different aspect. What I did was I took the jump to become a sergeant, and I love that position. That position was awesome. I think I say here that that's probably the most influential position in any law enforcement agency, is that first line supervisor, that sergeant, because they're in touch with the younger officers. So I had a blast being a sergeant. I got to work different aspects as a sergeant as well, criminal investigations. I went back to motors, and uh, at that time I think I did about 5 years as a sergeant. I was like, hey, you know what, let me try for lieutenant and see what happens. And it kind of just kept on building, right? As an older deputy and as a sergeant, I obtained my bachelor's degree. And that's kind of when I started to say, hey, look, if I am going to take this serious and progress through my career, I'm going to need to invest formally in my education. And that was something that my mom always preached and something I always ignored.
Yeah.
Uh, by the time I was a deputy, I was making decent money. I didn't need a degree. But once I got to that point, I was kind of like, hey, you know what? There's some check boxes that I'm gonna have to hit if I want to be even considered as a lieutenant. I know that as a lieutenant, I'll be better. I knew I was going to be well rounded. I knew that I was gonna pretty much know the job itself, but I didn't know the theories behind the why we did things that were required at a position like that. So I took the plunge. I tested to become a lieutenant. I became a lieutenant. When I was a lieutenant, at that point, I was like, oh yeah, I could run this place, right? I could really, really keep on moving up. I went back for my degree, or my master's degree in public administration. I at that point, I didn't want to be one focused on, ultra focused on criminal justice. I wanted to kind of learn, well, why do public administration entities do things a certain way. So that's kind of why I went into public administration to expand my knowledge. I attended the National Academy. I kind of kept moving, and then, finally at the sheriff's office under Sheriff Wiles, he appointed me as a commander of criminal investigations, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud because I was pretty young, considering I was going to be in a command position, but it wasn't because of anything other than I believe my hard work,
Mm.
and really putting in that work every day. I hit all the check boxes, and I did everything to put myself in perfect position to be considered for that position. I remained there for about 2 years as a commander, and then the position that I hold right now opened up, and I knew that I had already been able to retire at the sheriff's office. I had already done my 20 years, and I started thinking like, hey, there's a lot of things that although I could do as a commander, I would believe that as a chief, I'd be able to do so much more. So I applied for the chief of police here in the city of Socorro, and I was hired. It wasn't the first chief position that I applied for. There was actually a school district here in Socorro in the same area that I applied for, and I was a finalist. And I will tell you, I was not happy when I didn't get selected because I believe the other candidates, although they were very qualified, I felt like I was better suited to lead an organization, but I didn't get it, and it was a lesson learned. And it really, truly, I believe that it was God's will of putting me in the place that I'm at now, because this position means so much to me. The community means so much to me, and it really, really has it's been a fantastic ride in law enforcement. If it ended tomorrow, I can tell you that I'm very happy of how it went and where I'm at right now.
I love that story. I want to kind of go back to the very beginning because I find this to be really fascinating that you were a civilian that needed help from a law enforcement agency, and you were inspired by that detective that helped you. And one of the things that I wrote down, because I truly believe this, that you never know who you can inspire in life. And I would imagine that that detective was just doing their job, like didn't wasn't setting out saying like I'm going to set the trajectory for this young kid's life, but was doing their job and being of service. And that was impactful and inspiring for you. And that did set the trajectory for now 24 years in law enforcement. And I find that to be so cool. And I want everyone who's listening to understand that you have that ability every day to inspire other people to be better, to inspire people, young people to want to be in this profession. So I really like that piece of the story that I know you didn't spend a lot of time on it, but I wanted to come back to that because I do think that we forget the influence that we have as humans to inspire other people around us.
So I will tell you, I even know his name, Detective RC, right? El Paso PD, and he's on the west side. I've probably seen him once since then. And I saw him in my Peace Officer Academy when I was being taught by him. And I want to say he was teaching maybe financial crimes. I do remember that I went up to him on break and said, "Hey, just so you know, this is where we met. You probably don't know me. I'm just another person." But you're absolutely right, right? For me to remember his name, for me to even remember that story, uh, I think it speaks volumes of how he acted. There's nothing I can necessarily say that he did that kind of stuck with me other than the way that he carried himself, the way that he treated me as a victim, the way that he explained the process. And I think me as a 20-year-old kid was kind of like, who was looking for a career, right? I was looking for a job,
Yeah.
for something to fall into, where I was kind of like, he carried himself in a way that he was proud to do his work. And I think you make a good point is that the officers that I have here, and we try to instill that in not just our officers, but in my career is, you never know who you're talking to, and you never know what you're going to inspire or what you may create by when you're talking to them. But if you leave that positive impact on that person, you never know. And you're right. And I had never even looked at it until you said that, Paige. I'd never even done that. I had attributed so much to other things, but the truth is, that's kind of what kind of was like, hey, you know what? Like, I knew my uncle was a border patrol agent. I knew that my cousin was a deputy sheriff. I knew one of my other cousins was a El Paso police officer, but it hadn't really inspired me at that point. But it was something when I got to meet him and I got to see the way he carried himself. Like, hey, you know what? This is a legitimate career that I might want to go into.
Yeah, no, and I think too, to your point, the way that you present yourself can impact so many other people. And it doesn't even have to be someone who wants to enter in this career. Obviously, that was something that happened for you, but I also think the perception within the community, I come from a childhood of, my dad was incarcerated and, there's a lot of domestic violence. So I had a lot of encounters with law enforcement as a kid, from a different perspective. And I always had a positive experience. It was always scary because the situation was not great, but I didn't have a negative perception because the people who responded in a way that was helpful. And so I think that if you think of it in that way too, like maybe I wouldn't be here today if I would have had a different opinion of law enforcement. If someone would have acted differently towards me as a kid, maybe that would have shaped my perception and the way that I responded to things. And I think that even if you don't think so, you are impacting people and the way that you present yourself does matter, and so I try to live by that too. I try to be as authentic as I can, obviously I think that that's important, but I think that people are looking to you, and they're looking for you to see how to be,
And I think in law enforcement, we're under such a microscope anyways,
Mm,
right? And sometimes for the good and sometimes for the bad. But you're absolutely correct, is that we want to have those positive interactions with people because you're correct. I mean, my thought is, well, why would Paige want to do this? Like, are you a retired police officer? What is it that caused this? Well, it's the interactions that you've had with law enforcement that really seeing, hey, look, this is something that I could do to help that profession and that community. And you're right, is that we may not necessarily inspire a future chief of police, but we could have a better interaction the next time we deal with these people, or they could be a business owner or anything else. And we really need to understand that as police officers or law enforcement in general, is that we are a commercial for our agency, we are a commercial for the profession, and how we carry ourselves is very important, and it's seen by many, right? Even when we don't, I mean, even when we don't even realize that we're being looked at. Detective RC had no idea what was going to happen in the future, right? And
exactly.
he just did exactly what he would have probably done with anybody else, and
Yeah.
it just so happened to be me.
Yeah. And I think regardless of your title, everyone has leadership qualities and is in a position of leadership. And so I really appreciate that. I wanted to ask you because you had a lot of different assignments throughout your career, and you said that you were always trying to learn, different perspectives and learn different roles. Do you think that having those different um, assignments throughout your career that helped you to become a better leader, to understand what other people are going through within those, various roles?
100%. I think that so the way that I am is I like to learn. I really do. I want to say almost I'm kind of a nerd of sort.
Mhm.
If there's a course and I think it's intriguing, I want to take it. I want to learn. I mean, I'll tell you this. This weekend, I'm flying out to San Diego to go to SHRM, which is the largest HR conference in the world, I believe.
Mm.
I'm a police chief. I'm a cop. I have no like HR is not my thing, but I was looking at the schedule earlier and I was kind of finding a bunch of courses that I think that would really benefit me here back at the agency. So to answer your question, absolutely, it makes you a very well-rounded leader. Maybe not necessarily for leadership tactics, but you're able to relate to the people in those positions,
Yeah.
right? You're able to relate to the problems that they may be facing, and what gives a leader a lot of credibility is, have you worked in those boots? Have you walked in their shoes? And I think that was kind of my goal as I was coming up, was at the sheriff's office. Again, I thought my career was going to end in the sheriff's office. I thought I was going to do 30 years, and it just didn't happen that way. But I brought all those experiences here. And you constantly hear me reflect here is that, hey, look, when I was at the sheriff's office and I was doing this is things that we learned. Maybe we can come and replicate that here. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think absolutely it helps me become a better leader. And then it really, really helps me engulf myself. Like, what I like to do is engulf myself in what they're doing so that I understand. And then me, as the position that I hold, I'm able to make their life much easier because I do hold the purse strings maybe, or I'm able to get the technology that's needed, and you get to learn the different aspects. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that as a leader, you really have to understand what your people are going through. You have to understand what their job is, and you have to relate with them, right? And I think that's what I did along the way, probably not even thinking about it, right? Hey, you know what? There's a motor assignment. I mean, the reason I wanted to go to motors wasn't any other reason other than I got to ride a Harley, right, for free. And I mean, but I learned so much in that position, right? And then I went to the training academy because I felt that I could really help the future generations of law enforcement. So that's kind of why I went around. But come now, oh, I learned so many lessons along the way that have really helped me help my organization, and not just my organization, but organizations that border me, because of the experiences that I've had.
I think that you're spot on with people want to know that you understand what they're going through, and it gives you a certain level of credibility to be able to say, hey, like, I might not be doing what you're doing right now, but I know what you're going through. I think that does go a long way for people. I'm also curious, do you think that by you switching assignments and continuing to learn and to grow, that helped your wellness? Do you think that helped prevent you from getting burned out and that helped you to like keep that momentum going forward as you rose the ranks?
Absolutely. And I will tell you that that wasn't done on purpose either,
Yeah.
right? It was a matter, it was almost 2.5 years throughout my career. Every 2.5 years I changed assignment just by luck, right? Luck and circumstance, whatever the case may be. That's why it happened. But I didn't get left in special traffic investigations, investigating fatalities where babies are killed and children are killed and parents are killed for a long time, right? I went back for a stint as both a sergeant and lieutenant, but my role was much different. And I think that in law enforcement, we have to be very careful with those positions, because when I was a traffic investigator, I saw things that you can't unsee,
Yeah.
right? There's several fatalities that ring in my head where I mean, I work countless fatalities. However, there's two that I remember their names,
Mm.
right? Out of all of the ones I've ever worked, there's two that I remember their names, and I can tell you why. And one was because it was a 8-month-old baby who was killed, and my daughter at the time was 6 months. My youngest daughter was at the 6 months. So I remember that one, and then I remember another one, which was a 18-year-old who was graduating from a high school here in my city now, who tragically passed away as an accident. So I think that if I had stayed in that position for 5, 10, 15 years, I think it would have worn on me tremendously. So it was enough to get the experience. It was enough to be able to contribute to the organization, and then move on to take those experiences to either learn more, expand more, teach more, whatever the case may be. I
Yeah.
will tell you that at the sheriff's office, there was a sergeant who's since retired, who was there in homicide for 20 plus years. And I ended up supervising him both as a lieutenant and then as a commander. And I was very, very cautious of overworking him. He would never turn anything down, but probably under my command, I started pulling back some of the reins because I didn't want that to wear on him. I can't imagine being in homicide and being in child crimes and overseeing sexual assaults and those horrible crimes for 20 plus years. And I think that in law enforcement, we really need to watch our personnel because it wears. It
Yeah.
really wears on people, whether they show it, whether they don't. Some people will reach out, some people won't. And I think as leaders, we really have to watch that. And just by luck in my career, that happened, right? It really was by luck. But I will tell you that although I've never been diagnosed with anything, but when we lost officers in the line of duty and when we had things like that, I woke up with cold sweats. There were certain things that would trigger me as far as like the sound of my phone the day that we received an alert where one of our officers was killed. And it was that lieutenant rank really where I started to learn that, hey, I have to do a lot more for wellness, right? Because I feel all right, but I'm realizing that I have these other conditions, these night sweats, the inability to sleep, right? The irritability, and even the being kind of like I would hear a certain alert, and I can hear it now. When that goes off, I distinctly remember when one of my officers or one of my former students, when I was a training in the training academy, was killed in the line of duty. So yeah, I think those 2.5 years we have to be very careful. I mean, I don't know if 2.5 years is the perfect thing. It worked well for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I really like everything that you said about one, try to learn and grow as much as you can, even if it's things that are outside of your profession. I really like that you said you're going to an HR conference, and how you're going to be able to bring that back as tools, and I think sometimes, I do the same thing where I'm like, how can I go to this wellness conference or how can I but maybe there are some other things that I can go to that would help to expand my knowledge base so that I can bring those outside perspectives into the things that I'm doing currently. And so I really like that approach of learn as much as you can, try to grow as much as you can as a person and as a leader, and have empathy and different perspective for the various roles within your organization. And then, try to switch things up if you can to, not just impact your professional growth, but to also impact your wellness so that you're not stuck in that burnout phase. Because that's one of the things I hear a lot. And I know that that's one of the areas of focus for a lot of organizations is, how do you try to prevent some of that burnout and that cumulative stress and trauma that happens throughout a career. And I do think that it sounds like a good strategy to try different assignments, try different things because it's only going to help to elevate you and to offload some of the repetition of those things that you see. Do you think because I know in us talking offline that you coming into your current organization, you really had a focus on rebuilding, trying to enhance the culture and have more wellness infused into your organization. Do you think that your experiences with wellness and the things that you had gone through really connected you to the why and to that motivation to try to incorporate more wellness into your department today?
No, I think it did. I will tell you that when I was coming up, there was a very different I guess, practice in the way that we did law enforcement, right? It
Yeah.
was law enforcement above everything, right? Some chiefs or some people go back to the warrior and the guardian, right? So
Mm,
we were the warrior. We couldn't show tears. We couldn't show emotion. I mean, I remember working for a lieutenant and sergeant that we couldn't even eat in uniform, right? Like they expected us to eat where we couldn't be seen.
mm,
And I think that part of me when I came over was there was some things that I saw that were really good coming up in my career, and then I saw some things that were horrible. And I worked for both great bosses and both horrible bosses. And I will tell you one that really resonates with me is the expectation for an officer to get back on in line of duty after whether it be a birth of a child or somebody being sick was huge, right? Like at that time, men weren't necessarily out when their spouse gave birth to their baby. And I will tell you, my first daughter, I pretty much was back to work within two weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And I regret it. I regret it. I regret 100%. So I know that when I came in here, those were things where when people go out on leave, I'm like, take the leave, right? If it's your vacation leave, take your vacation leave. The one thing that I always and I have to premise this because I expect for my employees to be watching this eventually, is
Mm.
that the sick leave, I also say guard it because you never know when you're going to need it, right? Vacation leave, absolutely use it and burn it as you need to so that you can relax and that you can enjoy your family. But I'll tell you, sick leave was very important for me, especially when my father was diagnosed with cancer. He beats cancer, but he needed a liver transplant. I had to be out of work for nearly a month and a half or 2 months to be with my dad. And my point of telling you that story is that I went from coming in and only taking a week or 2 weeks with my oldest daughter to when my second daughter was born. I think my wife almost had to push me to go back to work, right? Because I was so happy being there with him. But then going back to when I had to take care of my father and to be there with him, I realized along my career that although my career is important and although the law enforcement field is important, my family by all means is the most important thing. And I think those were things that I brought here was to make sure that my employees know that above all, if I don't have an officer who's well at home, if I have an officer who's stressed at home, whether it be because of finances, whether it be because of issues at home, whether it's not shift work, I need them to know that family is number one, and the job's going to be here, right? The job's going to be here, and when you go on your days off, enjoy your days off, right? One of the things I did, and I know there's some debate on this, is we went to 12-hour shifts. Before I got here, there was officers working 9, 10, 11 days straight,
Mm.
right? Overtime because they just didn't have the manpower. Well, what we did is we came in, we said, hey, look, let's go to 12-hour shifts. And although 12-hour shifts are long, our officers only work 14 days a week. I mean, 14 days a month,
Yeah.
right? So they get every other weekend off. They're able to plan in advance what their weekend looks like in August and in October. And I think that goes a long way for wellness. And those are things that I brought here because I wanted them to know that I need healthy employees. I need effective employees. But all of that is rooted back to what's happening at the house when before they go 10-8 any day, right? Again, I will tell you when I start having issues with employees, whether it be discipline issues, normally I can kind of attribute it to something being triggered at home, right? Because whether it be lack of sleep because they're not sleeping because they have a newborn child, or maybe stress and lack of sleep because they don't have the finances. So we really trying to improve our wellness here at the police department. And another thing, and unfortunately I missed, I'm looking to get a grant in where I want a grant to be able to allow and almost I don't want to say force, but force them to do some kind of physical activity here on overtime where they can work out or walk or whatever the case may be. But on top of that, what I also want to do is I've seen so many law enforcement officers who have problems with finances,
Mm.
and really to start coaching and bringing in a financial expert to come and coach our officers on what they need to be doing so that they can better plan for the future, right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you right now, if I had listened to somebody or if somebody had talked to me 20 years ago or 24 years ago now and told me to max out my 457, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you, Paige. I'd be on a beach, I'd be with my wife, and I'd be on vacation. But financial importance, financial stability is very important when it comes to wellness because it triggers me working too much. It triggers the stress, right? It triggers arguments. It triggers all kinds of things.
Yeah. You talking about how you regret having to work over family, and that was a lesson that you had to learn maybe, the hard way after the fact, really hit home for me because I try to have as few regrets as I possibly can. I've always tried to live that way of seeing all of the mistakes and the failures and everything that I've done in my life, maybe not the best, as opportunities for growth and development. Um, with that being said, there's a couple things that have always stuck in my head. And I think we're always going to have those moments where we're like, man, I really wish that I would have done something differently there, or I really regret that. And one of those is me choosing my career over my family member who was on their deathbed and thinking that I had more time and ultimately didn't and chose a work event over staying there, with them. And you never get that time back, and I do think it shows you the importance of your family and your life. And sometimes, and I'm so guilty of this, and still I think today I do it. And, maybe this is something that's relatable for people who are listening, but still today I'm guilty of wrapping myself too much in the identity of who I am in my career, and the things that I'm doing on a day to day, where sometimes I don't prioritize the things that maybe I should, and I don't spend as much time with my family as I should. And I think that those really hard moments give us better perspective on the things that matter, and then give us that opportunity to do things better next time. I know that you also said that you wish someone would have told you about finances and that maybe you'd be, chilling with a coconut somewhere on the beach. Is there anything else that you think that you've learned throughout your career? Maybe a mistake or something that you wish you would have done better that was an opportunity for you to grow and develop that might be helpful for someone who's listening?
So I've had a bunch of failures along the way, and I really think that that's kind of what put me in the position that I am now,
Yeah.
right? I do want to kind of go back into the choosing work um, over family, and I distinctly remember this one. So at the time, and most officers know or listening will know that as a police officer or a peace officer in Texas is that you have the ability to work a bunch of off duties, and you have the ability to pretty much make more money than you make on duty working off duty. And sometimes we as officers start to prioritize this, and we realize that we want to have the big truck, the boat, the whatever the case may be. Along the way, while I was raising my daughter with my wife, my oldest daughter, I can remember doing that, and I can remember going to these off duties to go work, so that I could bring more money home. And the day that it changed for me was the day, and I'm sure my daughter, she maybe 2 years old, 3 years old, uh, and she made a comment. She's like, "Oh, mom," I was giving my wife and my daughter a kiss, and I told them. Hey, I'll be back. I'll see you in the morning, whatever the case may be. I'm gonna go work overtime. And my daughter has made a comment, oh, mom, it's just me and you again. Dad has to go work. And then my wife just casually made a comment like, yep, he has to go to work. And at that point, I was like, oh no, that has to stop,
Mm.
right? That has to stop. Now, sometimes in our cases page, we do have to choose work, right? And again, I made some mistakes along the way, but at those points, I try to remember those positions where, hey, you know what? I may make a little bit extra money, but I need to be present in my daughter and my wife's, both my daughters and my wife's life. And that's something that I've really done. I think I have two regrets in my life. Pretty much that's it because I think all the other ones are lessons learned. And that was a lesson I learned, taught to me by a 3-year old, right? And going back to the mistakes that I've made along the way, I think I've made mistakes where as I chose work over my family, right? And at times it still appears that way now where I have to go. Now I think I've reached a position where I can kind of not have to sacrifice as much because I can kind of go and come as I need. But I will tell you that here at Socorro, I want our officers to be present in their kids' lives, right? I want them to be at the baseball games if they can be there, at the softball games, or an awards assembly. And my employees know that, hey, you know what? Do you mind if I just go out real quick, just say hi, see they get to see their child and then come back to work. Those are things that mean a world to a kid, mean the world to our employee. And if we're doing things like that, that just makes us better, a better organization. So to sit there and say that I have mistakes, absolutely. But every mistake that I made has gotten me where I'm at. Now, when I've made those mistakes, sometimes I was punished. I've been suspended, right? I received letters of reprimand, and the way that we recover from those mistakes and those lessons learned are very important, because we can either become bitter and remain bitter and hate life and blame everything on everybody else, or we can take responsibility and say, hey, you know what? I made a mistake. It's time to move on. And I'm not gonna lie, I've made those mistakes. I've been bitter, right? And then at some point in time, I realized, hey, I'm not happy doing this. I'm making myself miserable. I'm in control of my own destiny. And one thing I teach my softball girls is there's some things that you can control, and then there's some things you can't. And what you can control is your attitude and effort. And that you can always control, and it can either be good or it can be bad. So to say that I've learned lessons, absolutely I've learned lessons, but they've definitely put me in the chair that I'm in right now. And again, I share this is that when I bring in officers into my office because I have to discipline them, they're usually greeted with a long story about how I once was in that chair and I once made that mistake or I did that. And this is how I learned. And I learned because I was taught that you have to be accountable. You know, we make a mistake, you don't just get to get a slap on the hand. You have to be accountable. And I think that's really what got me to the point that I'm at right now.
I really, really like the self-accountability. And I had an experience like this too. I remember being like, this is bad and I can't deal with this. And I know that this is going to continue to happen and I can't XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. And I actually had a therapist one time say, you're right. And I was like, what? And she looked at me and she goes, yeah, you're right. She's like, those things are probably going to continue to happen. What are you going to do about it? And I was like, what? And it was this moment of like, oh, and it's exactly what you said. It's like, I have control over me and my choices and my decisions and my attitude towards this. And I get to choose, how I respond to this. And it took me out of this, and I'm going to say this very loosely in like quotes, and this is for me. It took me out of this like victim mentality of all these things happening to me into a space of empowerment of like, you know what? Like I'm going to take the reins and I'm going to make these choices and I'm going to start taking accountability for my stuff. And I think sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need a little bit of someone to grab your shoulders a little bit and be like, "Hey, like you can't control everything, but these are the things that you can control." And so I really, really appreciate that. So you had this moment where you're like, man, I need to be more present at home. I need to like make sure that I show up for my family. What are some things that you've done now to be more present and to have that disconnect from work that maybe other people can learn from? Because I know that there's a lot of juggling going on, and I would imagine it's easier said than done to like leave work at work. But what are some of the things that you do in your personal life to, disconnect and to connect with your family and build that stronger unit?
So I will tell you that along my career, there's been different times where I was tethered to a telephone more than I was in other positions. As I was moving up, sergeant, you tend to only have to worry about when you're on duty,
Yeah,
right? And then as a lieutenant, it kind of graduates. And it was funny that as a commander at the sheriff's office, my phone almost stopped, right? It was a dire emergency when I was getting called. When I got here as the chief of police, my phone wouldn't stop, right? It was and they were long days. They were be here at 7:30 in the morning and I was leaving 7:30 at night. I mean, I was trying to rebuild an organization.
right.
Now it's gotten to the point where the phone calls are almost back to where, hey, you know what? Unless it's really, really bad, then I get called. So that really helps, right? But along the way, I think the biggest thing is being able to have a life outside of law enforcement. And the one thing I'll share, and I always share this, is that I've coached my oldest daughter since she was 5 years old in softball, and I've coached my youngest daughter since she was 3 years old in softball. My oldest daughter just graduated from a high school here in El Paso, and she's going to be going to play at a junior college softball. My youngest is about to enter high school to play enter high school, and she's entering an early college program. So the reason I tell you that is that when I leave here, when I leave here, and whether it be 4 o'clock today or 5:30 today, I usually am running and gunning, and it really has nothing to do with work. It has to do everything with those two girls and my wife. And as soon as I get out of here, and I'll give you yesterday as an example, is I get out of here about 5:30. I drive home. I change. I go and I hook up the trailer with all the softball gear. and then I'm on the field from 6 o'clock all the way to 9 o'clock, and that's really my happy place,
Yeah.
right? That's where, and it's really because everything that's happened in the course of the day, whether it be an officer injured, whether it be a fleet, whether it be a homicide that we had in our city, not that that happens all the time, right? But whether all that happens, once I get on that diamond with my daughters and her teammates and their teammates and the team that I help run or coach, everything is good. Everything is now we're worrying about a sport. And I think that because I've done that for so long has really, really helped me make it through life. It really is because my two daughters, they keep me busy enough. And my oldest daughter, I mean, she focused her 4 years. She played high school softball, so we had a season, and we'd have some other going. But my youngest was in every sport in middle school, so it didn't matter. We were always busy. And then now that we hit the summer season, we just got back from Lubbock, right? We spent a weekend up in Lubbock. This weekend, before I fly out to San Diego, I have another tournament with my youngest, and then the following week. So it's just really busy. But I think the thing is that having an identity outside of being a police chief or being a cop is really important because although the girls that I coach and the parents that are their parents, my players' parents, they know I'm a chief, but to me, I'm just there. To them, I'm just coach. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I think that is the way that I make it through. And then having that identity with my family, my I mean, my daughters didn't even realize I was pretty much a cop until I had to put a uniform back on, and I was back on patrol when they were like, "What is that doing?" Right? Because that when they were coming up, I was an instructor, right? So they only saw me in a polo and a t-shirt. They saw me with a gun, but they didn't realize that I was a cop that was out in the street. So that's important. And if my family and my daughters didn't realize that I was a cop, that's exactly what I want because I wanted to be dad the whole time. And I attribute it really to those three. And of course my parents and my wife's parents have but I think more than anything is having that family and just being so involved in their life. I mean, I run their booster team or their booster club. I'm involved in every aspect. And I guess when I had kids, I told myself, although my parents were involved in my life, I wanted to be better than that. I wanted to go and visit the class whenever we were invited as parents. I wanted my daughters to know that dad was there and dad was present and dad was just dad. And that's really important to me. And I think that's one of the reasons that I've gotten to where I'm at today. And I think having that identity and really unfortunately, I've had people in my career that I've seen where the badge is everything to them, right? The badge is everything to them. It's their identity. It's every aspect of them. And if they are, I mean, not that I don't carry off duty, but these are the guys who are ultra sensitive to any situation that's going on. And I truly would hate to have raised my daughters in that type of world because then they would have grown up so cynical and they wouldn't have the outlook that they have on life that they do right now, and unfortunately there's some people whose identity is the badge and they've done it for so long and they stay doing it for so long and they retire after 45 years or 35 years and they have no identity outside. And I'll be honest, if I retired today again, if I retired today again, I think I would pretty much fall into something. I wouldn't. I mean, I I I assume that I would be all right. I wouldn't be worried about not being a cop, and I think that's very important.
Yeah. Everything that you just said to me is wellness. Like
Yeah.
that is the epitome of what wellness is. You have this work-life balance where you're able to be present at home, you're able to show up for your family and have connections and memories with your family unit. You also show up at your job and you're refreshed and you perform really well because you're prioritizing your home life and your work life. Everything that you're saying to me is wellness and attributes to longevity. And I know that that's all of what you're trying to infuse in your organization? I know when we talked offline, like you take all of your experiences, all of your words of wisdom, and you share that with your team so that you can have that culture and make sure that they have long and successful lives and careers too. And I did want to give you this little shout out because when we talked, you said that, you came into your organization kind of in a rebuilding stage, and you have now almost full staffing, almost, because of it. And I think that that really is a testament to the work that you've done. People that want to stay there, people who want to work there. I think that when you can create a culture where people know that they're cared for and that they do have opportunities to have a long and successful, not just career, because I don't think that the younger generation necessarily cares as much about some of those things. They care about the work-life balance, they care about their time off, they care about their family. So when you can come in as leadership and show that you care about that too, and you're leading by example by saying, hey guys, when I'm gone and I'm with my daughters and I'm coaching softball and I'm showing up, then that really leads to that. So I wanted to give you that shout out because I know you're really proud of the work that you've done with your organization.
No, yeah, and it's funny is that people pay attention to what the chief is doing, right? So I don't remember if I told anybody that I was going to be in Lubbock or not, or if that was even it. But people knew, right? And if I got a text or if I got a call or when I came back, everybody asked me, "Hey, how'd the softball tournament go? How'd your daughter perform?" But I think that's because that's exactly what we're trying to do here, right? We try to get to know our personnel. We try to make sure that we have conversations with them to know who they are.
Mhm.
Um, and I think we're large enough and we're small enough to be able to do that. And I think that even if I was a chief of a super large organization, I definitely would do that with as many people as I could. I mean, and if I had a smaller organization. So yeah, going back to the full staffing is that yeah, absolutely. Um, in law enforcement, it's a really tough time. People don't want to necessarily be cops, right? It kind of goes up and down, and sometimes everybody wants to be a cop. Sometimes people don't want to be a cop. But when I got here, I was told that there was going to be a mass exodus because there was going to be a changing of the guard and people were going to leave and people hated it here. Come to find out, a year and a half later, we're right at our maximum allowable officers, right? I'm about to hire two more officers, which is going to put me right at my 51, and I have two more graduating in a couple more weeks, which will put me at 53. And that's fantastic. And I couldn't tell you how many officers I inherited when I first got here, but I can tell you I had vacancies. I can tell you I had officers who wanted to leave, and now I think we're at a different time where we're paying well, right? Which is important, right? We have a good benefit package, but more importantly, we promote the work-life balance, right? We really promote the importance of having family and being present with the family and making sure that they know that. We really hate bothering our officers on their time off. And I am all over my supervisors if they are bothering them or forcing them to work or something that I don't know. I'm ultra involved when it comes to that
Yeah.
because I'm very aware when our officers are off and I know what shifts are on. And I'll ask supervisors like, why do we have this officer working? Is it? And then they'll be like, no, no, chief. You know what? He's here. We didn't draft him. We didn't do any of that because I'm absolutely against that because I want officers. I was blessed. I was really, really blessed in my career to work for good supervisors who showed me the importance of my family and explained that and then allowed me to enjoy that time off, right? And again, I will tell you that don't get me wrong, I am on the diamond and my phone does ring, right? And I will answer it. But it doesn't happen as often as it could happen because we have great leadership here and they're answering those things, but also because I think that I really, really try to make sure that I'm ultra involved in our family, and that's why I don't like bothering our employees on their time off because it's really important. It's really important, and our kids and our future generations they see that, and you make a good point that it doesn't necessarily. When I came in 24 years ago, the first thing that I was told is, "Hey, man, you're 20 years old. You can retire in 20 years. You'll be 40. You'll be able to start another career." So the whole time, my goal was I'm going to do 20 years.
Mm.
right? I'm going to do 20 years. And yeah, I wanted to eclipse these different ranks or whatever. But the new workforce isn't like that, right? The new workforce is about, being involved, making sure that they're involved in that decision-making process, feeling a part of the mission, and then work-life balance, is very, very different. I just went to a training recently and it was weird. I didn't think about it. Is I'm always thinking I plan on working till I'm 55. And when I'm 55, I'm gonna cash out my retirement from the other agency, and then I'm gonna cash out my 457 from here, and me and my wife are gonna live great, right? But then I go to this class and they're like, that's your generation. Your generation thinks that way.
Mm.
Whereas the new generation is, well, I'm going to go to Puerto Rico now on vacation because I don't know if I'm going to be around
Mm.
in 3 or 4 years. And I think that's something we learned in COVID, right? We learned how quickly the world could change. And
Yeah.
that's something that my generation is having to learn is that this new generation is more about the now and being present, right? Whereas my generation, is more at looking down the road. And I think having both of those combined makes for great wellness, right? So having that plan to be able to live down the line, but also being present now and realizing that I could be on my way home after this podcast and something could happen to me. And after that, it's only going to be what all the memories I left with my family on what really mattered.
Yeah. No, I like that perspective. And I think on the subject of the younger generation, what words of wisdom would you share? I know you've already shared a ton today, but what would you share in the context of wellness? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
So I think I learned it along the way, and I think I've said this over and over again, is you have to, as a police officer in law enforcement, you have to have a life outside being in law enforcement. You can't wear the badge all the time because it's going to get heavy. It's going
Mm.
to get very heavy, and it's not just heavy for you, it's heavy for everybody you're around. And I think that I had friends that weren't cops, and I love those people more than anybody else, right? I think it was in everybody likes to have a cop friend, right? They ask the questions, whatever. But the friends that I have, we've gotten past that stage where I'm just me, and I think that encircling myself with those types of people and different professions, and not just being with cops and identifying only with cops has really helped me get to where I'm at. I enjoy life, right? I enjoy it. Just I don't wake up cynical. I don't wake up angry. I've met some chiefs where like, oh man, do you hate it yet? And I'm like, no, man, I love it. Like I'm almost waiting for the day that I hate it because there's a lot of cops out there or chiefs out there who say, yeah, you know what, man, it's gonna get horrible. It's gonna get this. And I just don't. But the same thing applied as a cop, right? As a regular street officer, is that you run around those people who just hated life, and that wasn't me. It's never been me, and I really attribute it to being able to be out be something other than a cop, right? And having a life outside of the badge. And I think if there's anything that I could pass on to those younger generations, and I know that I pass on here, is hey, you know be present with your family, be present with your friends, uh, and have a life outside of the Socorro Police Department or in any other agency and have it. I mean, the badge weighs a lot during the 12 hours that we're working. There's no reason to wear it that much more.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time coming on here and sharing your wisdom and your insights. And that's all I have for you. If there's anything I missed, let me know. But thank you again for being here today.
No, Paige, I really appreciate you for having me on here. This is a first for me, but I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate the conversations that we've had, and I look forward to keeping in touch and learning from you as much as hopefully people learn from my experiences.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We'll definitely stay in touch.